Hey everyone, I hate to say it, but Senator Mark Kelly has an insight.
When I heard the secretary say that they're going to pause immigration from third world countries, I mean, I take that as a message that they don't want brown people coming to the United States. And I find that disturbing.
Hey everyone, I'm Rich Lowry of National Review, and that's Mark Kelly going to the race card in record time, occasioned, of course, by this horrific DC National Guard attack carried out by an Afghan national. President Trump responds by saying he's going to permanently pause third world immigration, and Mark Kelly says that's racist. Now, of course, when you have a terroristic crime carried out by an immigrant, it makes sense to want to kick the tires of your immigration system and figure out what went wrong. Now, there'll be the debate about what constitutes a third world country. I think the natural place for the administration to start here is the 19 countries of concern that had already set out for so-called travel ban. These are countries where you have issues with vetting, you have issues with chronic visa overstays, and the basic problem is that you don't have a government on the other end that's competent, that's orderly, that's trustworthy to help you determine the background and the identity of a person seeking to come here. This is places like, yes, Afghanistan, like Somalia, like Haiti, like Equatorial Guinea. Now, Kelly says this is picking on brown people, which is absurd for many reasons. One of them is that even if you knock out all the immigration from those 19 countries of concern forevermore, the flow of immigrants into the United States would still be overwhelmingly from Latin America and Asia. It would still be overwhelmingly brown, to use Mark Kelly's term, because just not many immigrants come from Europe anymore. Now, more broadly, it makes sense to totally re-examine and reconsider how we do immigration. Now, there should always be some humanitarian element to our immigration policy. As a matter of national honor, we wanted our Afghan allies out of that country safely when the Taliban took over. This is how the DC Guard shooter got in to this country in the first place. And there are truly desperate people around the world. You want to help some of them. But we should be honest. Refugees are extremely expensive. By and large, they come here very poor. They have instant access to our welfare programs, and they very often have trouble assimilating. And we see this, even though he wasn't technically a refugee, with the DC Guard shooter. He goes from Kandahar to Bellingham, Washington, near the Canadian border. That is a huge culture shock, even in the best of circumstances. But on top of that, he had mental health issues. He would isolate himself. He wasn't interested in taking his English courses, and it ends up in this catastrophe. By and large, the best arrangement for most refugees is to resettle someplace close to their home country, where they know the language, hopefully, where the culture is relatively familiar. And this is a crucial thing because refugee status is not supposed to be a permanent condition, where it would be relatively easy for them to go home when circumstances allow. For our purposes, our immigration system should serve the interest, the national interest of the United States, not necessarily the interest of the immigrants. We need to put our interests first, a crucial distinction, and we need to put much more emphasis in our immigration system on high-skilled immigration through our tolerance so long for illegal immigration, through chain migration in the legal immigration system, where we bring in all the relatives of a legal immigrant into this country. We have put a huge emphasis on low-skilled immigration in a way that makes no sense. It's hard enough for a high school dropout born and raised in the United States to make it here now. It's that much harder for a high school dropout from, say, Guatemala, where the quality of the schools is much lower and that immigrant likely does not know English. This is not the early 20th century anymore, where, to simplify, in the Ellis Island era, you can have all these immigrants coming off boats and you just plug them into factory jobs and everything works out. And we didn't just depend, by the way, on jobs assimilating immigrants back then. There was a massive Americanization effort across all aspects of our society, the education system, government, even companies that were employing lots of immigrants put an emphasis on you need to love America and assimilate into America. And we've lost a lot of that ethic in the country at the moment. But we should be selecting for skills, for education levels, for job skills, for English proficiency. And by the way, Mark Kelly, I know what you're thinking. There are actually a lot of so-called brown people around the world who speak English, and we should be trying to get immigrants here who love this country and its system of government and are grateful for them. A great example, by the way, of how important skills are is that Nigerian immigrants, Nigeria, not a great country, very troubled place, Nigerian immigrants have done pretty well in the United States because they have higher levels of education than the native born population. And by the way, we should want lower levels of immigration overall. Despite all the romantic rhetoric about the United States being a nation of immigrants, the level of immigration in this country has gone up and down over time. What's remarkable about the last 60 years, it's basically gone up without pausing or any decline for decades and decades, such that we are at the highest proportion of the foreign population in the United States ever. And one of the problems with such high levels of immigration is you get ethnic enclaves of the sort we have among the Somalis in Minnesota that change the politics and the culture of their locality. That's what we don't want. That's not good for assimilation. Now, I'm sure Mark Kelly would look at all this and say, oh, it's rank racism. I think for most Americans, it would represent common sense. I'm Rich Lowry, over and out.